The late 1990s was one of the most unstable chapters in Martin Lawrence's life, a time that nearly derailed one of comedy's brightest stars. By then, Lawrence was a household name. His hit sitcom Martin had dominated television, and his box office run with films like Bad Boys made him one of Hollywood's most bankable comedic leads. However, the pressure was mounting behind all the laughs and the success. In 1996, on a Tuesday afternoon in Los Angeles, Lawrence was spotted in the middle of Ventura Boulevard, screaming at passing cars and waving his arms. When police arrived, they discovered he had a pistol in his pocket. Witnesses described a surreal scene, one of the most recognizable faces on TV, standing in traffic, shouting at oncoming vehicles, until officers took him away and transported him to a hospital. Initially, Lawrence attributed the episode to exhaustion and dehydration, but those close to him knew it was more serious. His public meltdown became a national headline, sparking conversations about mental health, drug use, and the crushing weight of being a celebrity. Friends and industry insiders pointed to legal battles, relationship turmoil, and the relentless stress of staying at the top of his game as contributing factors. Rather than shy away from the incident, Lawrence eventually addressed it head-on. In his 2002 stand-up special, he spoke directly to those who mocked or misunderstood his crisis. "No one is immune to the trials and tribulations of life. No one," he told his audience. And in true Martin Lawrence fashion, he didn't stay down for long. After checking himself into a hospital and taking time away from the spotlight, he returned just weeks later, re-energized and ready to work. The following year saw him headline more blockbuster films, proving that his 1996 breakdown became a turning point. Mariah Carey's voice is one of the rarest in music. That gift turned her into an icon almost overnight. Discovered at just 18 by Columbia Records president Tommy Mottola, Carey released her debut album in 1990, producing 4 consecutive #1 singles, and establishing herself as a once-in-a-generation star. But success came at a cost. By 2001, Carey's seemingly unshakable world began to fracture. For those glued to MTV at the time, her chaotic appearance on Total Request Live is burned into memory. She wheeled an ice cream cart on stage, shed an oversized t-shirt for a tank top and shorts, and began speaking in a stream of fragmented thoughts. "I just want one day off when I can go swimming and eat ice cream and look at rainbows," she said breathlessly. Viewers were stunned, and even host Carson Daly admitted, "Mariah Carey's lost her mind. I don't know exactly what's going on here." Just days later, Carey was hospitalized for extreme exhaustion. At the time, that vague explanation did little to stop speculation. The episode was framed as a breakdown, another celebrity lost to the pressure that comes with fame. What few realized then was that Carey had been diagnosed with bipolar II disorder. As she later told People, she had long believed she was simply battling insomnia. In reality, she was experiencing cycles of hypomania and depression that had gone undiagnosed. 17 years later, Carey chose to share her diagnosis publicly, reframing that infamous moment through a new lens. Her decision to open up about her mental health challenges forced a reconsideration of how celebrity crises are covered, especially in the early 2000s, when conversations about bipolar disorder and depression were largely absent from mainstream culture. Years later, Carey speaks about her diagnosis with clarity and resilience. "I'm just in a really good place right now," she told People. "It does not have to define you, and I refuse to allow it to define me." There was a time when Whitney Houston was known first and foremost for her voice. To the public, she was a picture of perfection, but as friends and family told People in the wake of her passing, there were 2 Whitneys. There was the glamorous pop princess the world adored, and there was the woman from Newark, New Jersey, who quietly struggled under the weight of impossible expectations. Behind the polished image, Houston wrestled with insecurities, complicated family dynamics, and emotional pain. For Whitney, drugs became a way to cope, an outlet, as one record executive put it, to escape her pain. Her marriage to Bobby Brown in 1992 became part of the problem. The union was passionate, messy, and very public. They separated twice but never seemed to fully let go, even as Brown's arrest and their shared drug use dominated headlines. In a 2009 interview with Oprah Winfrey, Houston revealed the depth of their dysfunction, describing nights of violence, drug binges, and moments where she struck Brown over the head with a telephone. Cocaine-laced marijuana, she admitted, became her drug of choice during those years. Her final years were full of continued struggle. On February 11, 2012, the eve of the Grammys, Houston was found face down in the bathtub of her Beverly Hilton hotel room. The autopsy revealed a cocktail of substances in her system, cocaine, Xanax, and marijuana, and ruled her death an accidental drowning complicated by heart disease. Now, before we continue, I have something that I need to tell you guys. When I was a kid, on the 4th of July of all days, I was hit by a car. Fireworks, barbecue, and then bam, a trip to the hospital. Thankfully I recovered, but for my parents it was a nightmare, especially because of the insurance companies and them having to deal with the mountain of medical bills. And that's the reality for so many other people as well. Traditional personal injury claims are designed to wear you down. Insurance companies drag their feet, offer you pennies to what you deserve, and hope you'll just give up. That's why I wish my parents had known about Morgan & Morgan. There's a reason history remembers those who fought for justice, just like there's a reason why Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. And for over 35 years, they've been fighting for the people, not the insurance companies. Their results are insane. In Florida, one client was offered just $350,000, but Morgan & Morgan fought for them and got them over $12 million. In Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million, which was 40 times higher than what the insurer wanted to pay. That's because when you hire Morgan & Morgan, it's like hiring a legal army. They've got over 1,000 attorneys and 100+ offices nationwide, and they've recovered over $25 billion for over 500,000 clients. And the best part, there are no upfront costs. Their fee is free unless they win. Submitting a claim is super easy. You can start in less than a minute with no endless appointments, overwhelming paperwork, or long waits. So if you're ever injured, don't settle for less and let the insurance companies win. You can just click the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to get started with Morgan & Morgan today. Michael Jackson's life was a study in extremes, the biggest pop star in the world, yet one of its most publicly tormented figures. Behind his hit songs and iconic dancing, Jackson was falling apart under the relentless pressures of fame. By the late 80s, the cracks were becoming visible. His changing appearance with multiple nose surgeries brought vicious speculation. Headlines accused him of trying to erase his blackness, ignoring his own statements about his autoimmune condition. Around the same time, Jackson began relying on painkillers prescribed after his scalp was severely burned while filming a Pepsi commercial. He later admitted that this was the start of a long struggle with addiction, a struggle he would never truly escape. Jackson also confessed to crying from loneliness as a child and feeling isolated even at the height of his fame. Friends and family said interventions were staged repeatedly to control his drug use, but Jackson often denied he had a problem. As he prepared for his 2009 This Is It tour, insiders reported that Jackson's mental state was deteriorating. A psychiatrist who saw him just days before his death described him as swinging between manic excitement and eerie silence, staring into space. Director Kenny Ortega sent urgent emails, warning that Jackson seemed paranoid, anxious, and physically weak, almost cracking up under the pressure of the comeback. And yet, Jackson pushed forward. In his final rehearsals, he showed flashes of his old brilliance, determined to silence critics. But behind the curtain, he was being administered daily doses of propofol, a powerful anesthetic, along with opioids and anti-anxiety medications just to sleep. On June 25, 2009, Jackson's body finally gave out. He died of cardiac arrest, the result of acute propofol intoxication. His death forced the world to reconsider how celebrity culture watches, and sometimes accelerates the collapse of its brightest stars. For a time, Winona Ryder was one of the most recognizable actresses in Hollywood, the star of major movies like Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands. But by the early 2000s, her career was overshadowed by a public fallout. The turning point came in 2001, when Ryder was arrested in Beverly Hills for stealing $5,500 worth of designer clothes. Reporters jumped on the story, turning a very real mental health crisis into a punchline. In truth, Ryder was in the middle of a breakdown. She later explained that she had been clinically depressed and recovering from a painful injury at the time. A doctor, later stripped of his medical license for overprescribing narcotics to celebrity clients, had given her heavy doses of oxycodone. Ryder described feeling disoriented and detached, saying she was in a weird point where you don't know if you are in pain, but you're taking it. The arrest, she would later admit, was a blessing in disguise, forcing her to confront the dependency and seek help. Unfortunately, Hollywood is an industry that depends on financial backers, and insurers saw her as a liability. Woody Allen once wanted her for a lead role, but was denied production insurance because of her legal troubles. For years, the actress found herself locked out of the work she loved. Throughout this period, Ryder became more vocal about her struggles with anxiety and depression. She described panic attacks so intense that her breathing became labored, as if bracing for an accident that never came. She admitted feeling shame, even guilt, over suffering despite her privilege, fearing she might seem self-indulgent. And yet, by sharing her story, Ryder discovered an unexpected silver lining, a connection. "Since I've talked about my anxiety, I've gotten a really good response," she said, recalling young women who told her that hearing someone they admired speak about mental health made them feel less alone. "I don't regret opening up," she said. "It means so much when you realize someone was having a really hard time and feeling shame and then decided not to hide anymore." When Britney Spears came onto the music scene in the late 90s, she was the image of a perfect pop princess. The world fell in love with the southern teenager who danced in a schoolgirl outfit and delivered one infectious hit after another. By 2002, she had 3 blockbuster albums, a film under her belt, and a high-profile relationship with Justin Timberlake that ended in heartbreak. A series of choices that fascinated and scandalized the public followed right after. We're talking about the infamous Madonna kiss, a 55-hour Vegas marriage, and a romance with backup dancer Kevin Federline. By late 2006, Britney was a mother of 2, filing for divorce, and suddenly finding her every parenting decision picked apart by critics. What should have been a period of recovery after childbirth turned into the most public collapse of the 2000s. Spears entered and quickly exited rehab, shaved her head at a salon, and attacked a paparazzo's car with an umbrella. In 2008, she was placed on a psychiatric hold after a custody dispute escalated into a standoff at her home. The images were everywhere. Britney being wheeled out on a gurney, paparazzi swarming the ambulance, her face a mask of panic. But what the cameras captured as spectacle was, in Spears' own words, a woman in pain. In The Woman in Me, she revealed that those incidents coincided with depression, grief over her aunt's death, and the trauma of losing her children. Her father and a lawyer were given sweeping authority over her finances, career, and personal decisions. This arrangement caused years of controversy and eventually fueled the Free Britney movement. Today, she describes herself as calmer, freer, and finally able to tell her own story on her own terms. For decades, Mel Gibson was one of Hollywood's biggest stars. However, behind the polished exterior was a man whose personal struggles repeatedly spilled into public view. In 2006, Gibson's carefully maintained image shattered during a now infamous DUI arrest in Malibu. According to the arrest report, Gibson launched into an anti-Semitic rant, declaring that Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. He also allegedly called the female officer on scene sugar tits, a remark he has alternatively denied and joked about in later interviews. Hollywood distanced itself, headlines screamed of his despicable behavior, and Gibson checked himself into counseling, admitting to a long history of alcoholism. But the controversies didn't stop there. In 2010, recordings of Gibson verbally abusing his ex-girlfriend were leaked online. On tape, Gibson could be heard yelling racial slurs, calling her degrading names, and even threatening violence. "If you get sexually assaulted by a pack of N-words, it will be your fault," he said, in one of the most damning lines from the tapes. The recording showed a man in freefall, consumed by anger and addiction, and they reignited conversations about Gibson's history of offensive remarks, from homophobic comments in the 90s to degrading women in interviews. In a 2002 interview, he revealed he had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, describing his mental state as one of extreme highs and lows. While critics have been quick to dismiss this as an excuse, the connection between untreated mental illness, substance abuse, and erratic public behavior is well documented. Owen Wilson is one of Hollywood's most charming actors, but beneath the charm and humor was someone fighting a much darker private battle. Wilson has admitted that his struggles with mental health began young. In a 2021 Esquire interview, he recalled having an almost obsessive fear of death as a child, a fear so strong that he finally confided his father, only to be met with a reaction that left him unsettled. Those fears stayed with him into adulthood, manifesting in episodes of depression that would later become public in the most devastating way. By 2007, Wilson was at the height of his career, but in August of that year, He was rushed to the hospital following an alleged attempt on his own life at his Santa Monica home. TMZ reported that his brother Luke found him in time to save his life, and Wilson was later transferred to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where he was deemed in stable condition. The news stunned Hollywood. This was the guy who made people laugh for a living, suddenly confronting a death that had nearly taken him. Rumors swirled in headlines about substance abuse and hard partying. Some blamed bad influences, others pointed to the pressures of fame. Wilson's rep denied the drug allegations, and the actor himself remained silent except for a short statement asking for privacy. Friends and family became his lifeline. His brother Andrew reportedly moved in with him and created small daily routines to help him regain stability. Slowly, Wilson recovered. In later interviews, he hasn't shied away from acknowledging the ongoing struggle. He compared life to a relentless movie villain, saying, "When life's being played by the bad guy, you gotta hang on and wait for it to pass." Amanda Bynes was once Hollywood's clean-cut child star, a teen comedy darling whose career seemed destined for longevity. Producers praised her as wholesome and level-headed, the rare child actor who wouldn't succumb to the pitfalls of fame. But just a few years later, that image would collapse in real time and the world was watching. The first signs came in 2010, when Bynes abruptly announced her retirement from acting on Twitter, then just as quickly reversed it and deleted her account. By 2012, she was making headlines for car accidents, hit-and-run charges, and a DUI arrest. TMZ and headlines documented everything, from gym-goers claiming she talked to herself, to her bizarre tweet asking President Obama to fire the police officer who arrested her. By late 2014, she was arrested again for another DUI. Shoplifting accusations followed, and Twitter rants escalated, including the infamous post where she said she wanted Drake to kill her vagina. What the public saw as chaos was, in reality, the disintegration of a young woman under immense pressure. Bynes later admitted, in a 2018 Paper magazine interview, that she had struggled with substance abuse since age 16, smoking marijuana regularly, and later using MDMA, ecstasy, and most significantly Adderall. After starring in She's the Man, she spiraled into a deep depression, obsessing over her appearance and turning to Adderall as a coping mechanism. Her breaking point came after seeing herself in Easy A performance she described as so unbearable to watch that she quit acting entirely. From 2012 to 2015, Bynes' life played out like a cycle. A fresh controversy followed by reports of recovery, then another public incident. The coverage was relentless, reducing her to clickbait and overshadowing the real story. A talented actress battling addiction, mental health issues, and identity struggles in the public eye. Today, Bynes has taken accountability for her past and remains focused on recovery and personal growth. Lindsay Lohan is a woman whose personal experience was turned into public entertainment. She was dissected for years by paparazzi, fans, and even her own family. By 18, she was already world famous. She was a Disney princess cursed by early success, and her fall became one of Hollywood's cruelest spectacles. In 2006, Lohan filmed Georgia Rule, arriving late to set or not at all, costing the production hundreds of thousands of dollars. When a furious letter from the studio executive leaked online, it confirmed what many in Hollywood already believed. Lohan was unstable. Her career, once unstoppable, began to go downhill. Legal troubles soon followed. In 2007 alone, she entered rehab 3 separate times and was arrested twice. One incident involving cocaine possession after crashing her car. Court-ordered rehab became a cycle, with Lohan spending more than 250 days in treatment by 2014. Judges forced her to wear a scram bracelet to monitor alcohol use, and headlines mocked her every step. She later admitted to Oprah Winfrey that she was an addict, describing alcohol as a gateway to cocaine and other drugs. The obsession reached ugly extremes. Reporters wanted every piece of her, and Lohan, exhausted and broken, seemed to give it to them. Her strained family relationships, financial battles, and constant surveillance worsened her addictions. For 8 years straight, she lived under probation, cycling in and out of courtrooms and treatment centers, each relapse magnified by the media. And yet, survival has become its own form of triumph. By 2015, probation-free for the first time in nearly a decade, Lohan began to rebuild. She dabbled in documentaries, retreated from the spotlight, and eventually returned to starring in films. Charlie Sheen was never supposed to become the face of Hollywood's collapse. He was born into privilege, a Malibu child, Martin Sheen for a father, a family of actors, and he was good. Really good. His early performances cemented him as a serious actor. By the time 2.5 Men made headway, Sheen was the highest paid actor on television, earning $2 million an episode. But off set, it wasn't entirely the same thing. Sobriety had already slipped, and the fame machine was working overtime. In AKA Charlie Sheen, the actor admits he was in the fight of his life, even before the public meltdowns began. 2011 marked the breaking point. Sheen's rant against showrunner Chuck Lorre went public. He called into radio shows, talked badly about his bosses, and launched into bizarre interviews where he coined phrases like tiger blood and winning. Unlike past Hollywood scandals that were hushed up by studio executives, Sheen invited the media inside. He let cameras see the girlfriends he called goddesses, gave tours of his home, and turned his personal crisis into performance art. The firing from 2.5 Men didn't cool him down. Friends of his describe it as a moment that took his addiction to a higher level. The now infamous 2020 interview showed a man who seemed euphoric and defiant. He later attributed that manic state to testosterone cream that sent him into crazy brain. His meltdowns became memes, his catchphrases rallying cries. Eventually, the fire burned out. Today, Sheen lives more quietly, claiming sobriety, years removed from the chaos. When Shia LaBeouf appeared on Even Stevens in 2000, audiences saw him as a mix of mischief and vulnerability that made him a star. But LaBeouf's career never stayed neat or predictable. He graduated from Disney to Transformers blockbusters, but the arc of his life has been defined not by the work, but by the eruptions that seem to follow him everywhere. By the 2010s, LaBeouf's behavior had become increasingly erratic. There were arrests for public drunkenness, bar fights, and a notorious night at Studio 54, where he disrupted a Broadway performance and was handcuffed during intermission. The next morning, he went on Jimmy Kimmel Live and turned the arrest into a comedy routine, admitting to grabbing Alan Cummings' backside and spitting on a cop's shoe, as if the whole thing had been performance art. In 2014, he walked the Berlin red carpet with a paper bag over his head reading, "I am not famous anymore." He repeated the phrase online for weeks, as if trying to stage his own erasure. Then came He Will Not Divide Us, the live-stream protest installation that turned into chaos, with LaBeouf being arrested on camera for shoving a man who shouted a neo-Nazi slogan. By 2017, the incident had turned darker. While filming The Peanut Butter Falcon, he was arrested after verbally abusing officers who had refused him a cigarette. Body cam footage showed LaBeouf delivering a racist rant, telling one black officer he was going to hell. It was an ugly moment, one LaBeouf later addressed with a rare public apology, calling himself deeply ashamed and expressing gratitude for the police's restraint. That apology would not be the last. In 2020, musician FKA Twigs filed a lawsuit accusing LaBeouf of sexual battery, assault, and emotional distress, painting a portrait of abuse that shocked even those who had followed his troubled career. Singer Sia added her own allegations, calling him a pathological liar who had conned her into an affair. LaBeouf has since sought treatment, telling interviewers he is sober and working on himself. Demi Lovato is a performer who has lived almost her entire life in the spotlight and survived it. A Disney Channel darling by her teens, Lovato seemed destined for superstardom. Her charisma, powerhouse vocals, and emotional honesty earned her millions of fans and 7 top 20 hits. But with fame came pressure, and Lovato's life quickly became a case study in what happens when the public watches someone fall apart in real time. At 18, Lovato abruptly left the world tour with the Jonas Brothers and entered treatment at Timberline Knowles. The official statement described it as a break for emotional and physical issues, but the truth was that Lovato had been battling depression, self-harm, bulimia, and a cocaine habit that had spiraled out of control. She later admitted she was using cocaine multiple times a day and was self-medicating undiagnosed bipolar disorder. The diagnosis, which came during treatment, gave context to the extreme highs and lows she had experienced since childhood, but naming the problem didn't make living with it any easier. When she returned to the public eye in 2011, her team marketed it as a triumphant comeback. Behind the scenes, however, she relapsed. In her 2017 documentary, Stay Strong, Lovato revealed she was actually high during interviews, where she talked about her sobriety. Her management quietly moved her into a sober living facility in a last-ditch effort to keep her alive. She came close to overdosing multiple times before finally achieving years of sobriety until one mistake unraveled it. On June 21st, 2018, Lovato admitted to fans in her song Sober that she had relapsed. Just a month later, she was hospitalized following an opioid overdose that nearly claimed her life. After 2 weeks in recovery, she returned to rehab, determined to try again. Lovato has since spoken openly about her addiction, mental health, and survival. In 2020, she delivered a tearful performance of Anyone at the Grammys, her first since the overdose, followed by a powerful Super Bowl national anthem performance that reminded fans why they fell in love with her voice in the first place. In the late 1980s and 90s, Roseanne Barr was a cultural juggernaut. Her sitcom Roseanne redefined what working-class America looked like on television, blending humor with realism in a way that had rarely been seen before. But behind the laughter, Barr was fighting battles that most of the public never saw, battles that nearly broke her. Almost from the moment her show premiered in 1988, Barr's clashes with network executives and writers became legendary. She fought for creative control, fought to keep her show honest. The stress took a heavy toll. Barr has spoken openly about suffering multiple nervous breakdowns during her run on Roseanne, even being hospitalized several times. Fame, rather than erasing the pressure, amplified it. In 1991, during her marriage to Tom Arnold, Barr made a startling public confession at a Survivors United Network event. She was an incest survivor. For 30 minutes, she recounted memories of abuse, describing in painful detail what she remembered of her childhood. The announcement fractured her family. Her parents denied the accusations, passed a lie detector test on national television, and sued her for libel. Her sister also went public, insisting Barr was lying and calling her unstable. Years later, Barr reflected on that period with regret. Barr's most infamous public scandal came on July 25, 1990, when she delivered a screeching off-key rendition of the national anthem before a San Diego Padres game. She grabbed her crotch and spat, an act that drew condemnation from fans and even the Vice President of the United States. The backlash was swift and brutal, cementing Barr's reputation as unpredictable. Years later, Barr reflected on that period with regret. In a 2011 interview with Oprah Winfrey, she admitted she had been heavily medicated and emotionally volatile. Lil Nas X has always been controversial, but in late August of this year, the spectacle turned into something out of the ordinary. On an early Thursday morning, Los Angeles woke up to see the Grammy-winning rapper strutting half-naked down Ventura Boulevard. He wore only white underwear and cowboy boots, the uniform of a man who knew every camera was on him. He sang as he walked, posed for strangers, even crowned himself with a traffic cone. And then, it all went sideways. According to police reports, officers arrived on the scene after concerned calls from bystanders. Law enforcement sources later claimed that the rapper charged at police and punched one officer twice in the face before being restrained. He was handcuffed on the street and transported to a hospital over fears of a possible overdose. The following week, Hill was charged with 3 counts of battery with injury on a peace officer and 1 count of resisting an executive officer. These are felony charges, carrying real prison time if convicted. On August 26, Lil Nas X appeared on Instagram, speaking directly to his fans for the first time since the incident. He looked shaken but defiant, pleading not guilty and confirming he had posted bond to secure his release. The court records made it official. The once untouchable hitmaker now faced 4 serious felony counts in Los Angeles. This felt like watching a breakdown play out in real time for a man who built a career out of carefully controlled chaos. The control now seemed gone. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you learned something, make sure to leave a like. Comment down below your thoughts on any of the celebrity breakdowns I discussed in this video, and subscribe if you would like to see a part 2 or more videos like this one. Thank you again, and goodbye.